The Grass-type starter is more often than not the least selected of the bunch. And a big reason as to why this is that many believe that they can be a bit underwhelming both in battle and in terms of design. However, that simply couldn't be further from the truth. And so today, I'm gonna be ranking every Grass-type starter Pokemon from worst to best. Now, while I will mostly be looking at the final forms of these Grass-type starters, the entire line will be taken into account, along with each starter's battling prowess both competitively and in-game, as well as design, stats, alternate forms, and finally, the importance of each starter to the franchise overall. But before we begin, I need you to smash the like button as it helps me out a ton. Alright then, with all of that out of the way, let's get started. Coming in dead last, we have Meganium. Meganium. I find you to be such an aggravating Pokemon. For being a starter introduced way back in 1999, I still find you to be very forgettable and also incredibly underwhelming. You see, Meganium's biggest problem is that it just doesn't do anything well. Its stats are poorly distributed, and being a mono grass type is just not really all that good. Also, the entire line's design is just so boring and uninspired. It just goes from a little grass boy to a long grass boy. Then, for a playthrough in Johto, the Chikorita line is also far and away the worst starter to use, as it'll have a huge disadvantage in a ton of gym matches and league battles. As sad as this might sound, there really isn't anything good to say about Meganium at all. It is just an objectively bad Pokemon. It is desperately in need of some kind of buff as soon as possible, whether it be a new ability, a boost in stats, or even a new form. Here's hoping in Legend Z to A, it ends up getting a much needed new Mega form. In 9th place, we have Chesnaught. Well, at least unlike the previously mentioned Meganium, Chesnaught can actually be kind of useful in battle under the right circumstances. Now, it's definitely not superb, but it does have some niche uses and some pretty solid physical attack and defense. The biggest problem with Chesnaught is that its type combination is just not great, and it's definitely the least popular of the Colossian starters. I mean, one of them is an absolute icon, and the other has also received a weird amount of attention over the years. But meanwhile, the Chespin line has kind of just been left behind. I really think that the design of the entire line is what hurts it the most. Sure, Chespin is okay, but Quilladin is an absolute abomination. And then Chesnaught itself is also horrendous looking. But in recent generations, it has gotten a bit better when it comes to battling. Now initially, in Gen 6, it was absolute dog water. But in the modern meta, it's gotten pretty good thanks in large part to its upgraded move pool. With access to moves like Spikes, Leech Seed, Spiky Shield, Iron Defense, Synthesis, and Body Press, it can be a really solid and irritating wall to face off against in battle. However, it still has loads of weaknesses, which includes one of the most abundant typings in the entire game. And that, along with its lack of popularity and hideous collective designs, earn the Chespin line such a low ranking. In 8th place is Hisuian Decidueye. To me, it always felt like Hisuian Decidueye had the potential to be a great Pokemon, but it kind of just misses the mark that would allow it to be a top-tier grass starter. Much like with Chesnaught, it has the grass and fighting type combination, which, again, really isn't all that great. Then, with respect to using one in Legends Arceus, it is certainly the worst starter to use in that game. It really just struggles in a lot of the important battles throughout that game, and it really will only ever have a true advantage in the battle against Noble Avalugg. Meanwhile, in that climactic battle with Volo, Hisuian Decidueye is essentially worthless throughout that entire fight. Sure, it can kind of be fun to use, but it will definitely make your playthrough pretty challenging. then if we look at it from a traditional battling standpoint, it's arguably worse. Its base stats are really not good at all. A 112 attack stat is alright, but everything else is just terrible, especially that 60 base speed, which is literally slower than Palpitoad. The only redeemable quality it has when it comes to battling is its signature move, Triple Arrows. It'll have 3 different secondary effects, and it's a borderline broken move altogether. But that's really about it for Hisuian Decidueye. It really could have been great, but it just ended up being very underwhelming. Taking 7th is Rillaboom. Rillaboom is one interesting starter. In my opinion, I find it to be solid. Not amazing by any means, but also not bad. Let's first discuss its design. I find Grookey, Thwackey, and Rillaboom to kind of be a mixed bag. Grookey and Thwackey are both great, but Rillaboom kind of misses the mark. On its own, it's good. I just despise that frickin' drum set. It's stupid, it's ugly, it's impractical, and it makes no sense. It also literally just spawns out of nowhere. I know all of the Galar starters are super gimmicky, but Rillaboom and its dumb drum set are just the absolute worst. However, it is surprisingly strong in battle. From a statistic standpoint alone, really the only thing of note is that great physical attack. However, it's Rillaboom's hidden ability Grassy Surge that turns it from good to great. Now, with the activated Grassy Terrain, it gets a boost to all its stab grass moves while also healing all grounded Pokemon. And this makes it a surprisingly versatile Mon. It can be run as a wall, a physical sweeper, and even a support Pokemon. It works so well in both singles and in double battles. And with its great kit and versatility, it quickly became one of the most used Pokemon in both competitive metas. Meanwhile, if you're wondering how the Grookey line performs in the Galar games, it's about the same as all the other starters. Game Freak did a good job of making sure no one Galarian starter was marginally better than the others. So yeah, in short, Grookey is a very valid starter to use, and the entire line is surprisingly solid. I just hate that dumb, gimmicky drum set that Rillaboom uses. Honestly, if it weren't for that, Rillaboom would have probably been a few spots higher. That's how much I hate it. Next up, we have Meowscarada. Meowscarada is a starter that has really grown on me since the release of Scarlet and Violet. At first, I thought its design was disgusting furry bait, and that it totally ruined the entire Sprigatito line. And well, now, I still do think that its final design is a bit much. It's a lot more bearable for me overall, and I do still really like Sprigatito's design, and I really believe that Florigato looks great. But what is certainly the best aspect of Meowscarada is its prowess in battle. Well, admittedly, it is kind of just okay for a playthrough of Scarlet and Violet. It is disgustingly busted when it comes to competitive. It boasts an insane physical attack and speed. That 123 base speed makes it the fastest starter Pokemon of all time. These stats pair quite nicely with its signature attack Flower Trick, which will always end up being a critical hit, resulting in some massive damage. And finally, it does have the ever so awesome hidden ability of Protean. Sure, it did kind of get nerfed in Gen 9, but it is still very strong and works great with its deep move pull. And the Protean ability also helps negate Meowscarada's less than optimal typing. Finally, I've really liked seeing the growth of Lico's Meowscarada throughout the Horizons anime series. It's a very fitting Mon for her, and seeing it grow and develop alongside Lico has been a definite highlight of the new series. Taking 5th place, we have Torterra. Torterra honestly might just be the coolest looking grass starter ever. Seeing as it's literally known as the continent Pokemon, Its massive kaiju-esque design really does wonders and definitely helps it stick out amongst its peers. For a common Sinnoh playthrough, Torterra is a very solid option. Sure, it'll struggle big time against Gym Leader Candace, but it will completely wreck Rourke and Volkner. And Torterra can even handle Bertha and Flint fairly well too. It's certainly not perfect, but it's definitely strong enough to anchor your team in Sinnoh. Stats-wise, it's bulky, it hits hard, and its Stab Earthquake will make it incredibly threatening. Grass and Ground is a neat typing offensively, though that 4x Ice weakness is certainly a glaring issue. When it comes to competitive, Torterra has never really been a top-tier pick, but it has always had niche roles as a bulky tank or a Trick Room sweeper. And actually, in Gen 9, Torterra finally got access to Shell Smash, which did give it a massive boost offensively and ultimately helped turn it into a pretty fast sweeper. Of course, in the Diamond and Pearl series, Ash Ketchum did have a Torterra, but we don't really talk about that. Still though, regardless, Torterra is and always has been a very good grass-type starter. Next up, we have Serperior. Now we have what is definitely the most elegant grass starter of the bunch with Serperior. The Snivy line has always been so fascinating. It's a very well-rounded line that gets better and better, even if it does end up losing its arms. While I do find Serperior to be my favorite of the Unova starters, it's probably not the actual best option for Black and White or for the sequels. Admittedly, it is a bit better in the sequels, but still, nothing really to write home about. Oddly enough, the same sentiment holds true for the Snivy line's representation in the anime. Ash himself did have a Snivy, and Serperior ended up being the ace Pokemon of Trips in Black and White. But yeah, just like I said earlier, they ended up being a bit underwhelming and were kind of just okay at best. But where Serperior truly thrives and earns its high ranking here is thanks to its prowess in competitive battle. Honestly, Serperior might just be the best competitive grass-type starter Pokemon ever. And this is solely thanks to its hidden ability, Contrary, which of course pairs perfectly with the move Leaf Storm. So now, instead of its special attack dropping after each Leaf Storm attack, it now greatly increases, ultimately allowing it to snowball through teams. Sure, it's a bit one-dimensional in battle as this is all it can really do, but it is great, and if it gets correctly set up, pretty much nothing will want to take Serperior on. So in closing, Serperior's incredible power and its elegantly gorgeous design earn it the 4th spot on today's rankings. Taking 3rd place is Decidueye. Now there is no modern Pokemon that became more popular more quickly than what we saw with Rowlet in Generation 7. I mean, just look at it. It's one adorable little round boy. And based solely on its design alone, the Rowlet line went on to become the most selected and most beloved starter from the Alola region. Now, the Pokemon Company knew how much of a hit Rowlet was with fans. So, in the Sun and Moon anime, they decided to double down and give Ash Ketchum one to use in Alola. And it was so popular and so powerful in fact, that it just remained as a god in its base Rowlet form throughout the series. And it would go on to become one of Ash's all-time most underrated Pokemon ever. As for the rest of the evolutionary line, Dartrix is awkward and kind of goofy. It's definitely among the worst of the middle stage starters, but it sticks the landing with its final form in Decidueye. It's like this epic aura-farming ghost owl archer, and it really doesn't get much cooler than that. For the Sun and Moon games, the Rowlet line performs incredibly well. It can breeze through a lot of the major battles, as it will have the typing advantage over just about all of them. The only real battles that the line might struggle with are with the Totem Fire types and Kahili in the Elite Four. Everything else is simply just fodder for God Rowlet. Sure, Decidueye might not be that great when it comes to competitive formats, but it definitely has its niches, especially on Trick Room teams. Overall, it is easily one of the coolest Pokemon in existence. Everything about Rowlet and Decidueye is so awesome, and all in all, it is one of my all-time favorite Pokemon ever. In second place, we have Venusaur. Yup, earning the silver medal on today's video is the OG of the entire archetype. With Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, and Venusaur, there is really just so much to love about all of them. Their designs are simple, visually interesting, and a perfect progression, from first stage to final stage. Now, the Bulbasaur line is also immensely important to the Pokemon franchise as a whole. If you didn't already know, Pokemon Green was actually one of the first ever Pokemon games, ultimately helping catapult Generation 1 into being a massive success. Next, as I explained in my video from last week, Bulbasaur is surprisingly the best starter to choose and use in a Kanto playthrough. This is thanks to the huge advantage it has over big battles, especially towards the early game. While it is notoriously known as being the least chosen starter in Kanto, it really just isn't fair, because Bulbasaur rocks, and it honestly deserves a whole lot more respect. Meanwhile, over the years, Venusaur has done a very solid job of standing the test of time with respect to power creep. Thanks to its natural bulk and its abundant access to healing moves, it has always been a very reliable wall/support Pokemon in the competitive meta. Of course, in Generation 6, Venusaur did get access to a new Mega form, and with it, it became exponentially better. With its thick fat ability, it essentially destroyed Venusaur's two biggest weaknesses, while also still giving it a huge stat buff. Knowing this, it shouldn't come as that big of a surprise that Venusaur ended up on loads of competitive teams, both in single battle and in the VGC meta alike. Finally, I have to note the importance of Ash's Bulbasaur in the anime. It was one of the first Pokemon that he ever captured, and it would go on to become one of his most reliable and most iconic Pokemon of all time. To close on the Bulbasaur line, it has always just been such a great Pokemon. Game Freak definitely hit it out of the park on their first ever Grass-type starter, but I just found one to be a bit better. And the best Grass-type starter ever is Sceptile. Sceptile is the epitome of everything that makes a Pokemon incredible. It's epic, iconic, a beast in battle, and it's been a huge influence on the Pokemon franchise. Now, Sceptile was the Pokemon that actually made the Grass starter cool. Prior to Generation 3, Venusaur was solid and very memorable, but it really wasn't that cool. And then Meganium, as you know by now, Meganium was always just awful. But Sceptile was just objectively awesome. It's literally dubbed the King of the Forest. That's just one awesome nickname and title to have, and it is perfectly fitting for the greatest Grass-type starter ever. But it isn't just Sceptile itself. Both Trico and Grovyle look incredible, and are some of the cleanest first and second stage starter Pokemon in the entire series. Sure, there might be a bit of bias here, well, because Sceptile is my all-time favorite Pokemon. Pokemon Emerald was my first ever Pokemon game, and my starter Sceptile was the first ever Pokemon that I had reached the prestigious level of 100. But beyond that, I always adored Ash's Sceptile in the anime. It was such a great Pokemon who actually had a really interesting and layered story. And then in battle, it isn't the GOAT debate for Ash, as it is easily his fastest Pokemon ever, and it's a certified mythical slayer. Also in the anime, we got to see Sawyer's Mega Sceptile, who was almost just as strong, and it had an awesome rivalry with Ash's Greninja. In-game, Sceptile is also an absolute monster, especially in any Hoenn playthrough. Seeing as it is known as the region with too much water, Sceptile and his Leaf Blade arms can easily tear through the entire region by itself. In Pokemon Emerald especially, it thrives in some of the biggest battles, including the 8th Gym Leader, as well as against Champion Wallace. The only tiny fault that one could ever have with Sceptile is that it has kind of fallen victim to power creep. It just doesn't hit quite as hard as it should to keep up with some other top tier mons. But it did get that OP Mega Form in Oras, which finally gave it that much deserved secondary dragon typing. In closing on Sceptile, it is far and away the greatest grass starter ever. It's fast, it boasts an awesome design, it made the grass starter cool, and it is indeed my all-time favorite Pokemon. Well guys, that's that. Those are my rankings of every grass-type starter Pokemon from worst to best. But remember, this was only my opinion, so be sure to let me know what changes you would make in the comment section below. Also, be sure to check out my next video where I'll rank every water-type starter. Finally, check out these videos on screen now for more Pokemon content. Thanks, guys.